everybody. Happy Friday. It's Friday. Friday, Friday, Friday. Friday's always a great day because we get to get together and communicate. We get to talk and discuss and have interesting conversation. There's always new records on Friday, which is every genealogist's dream come true. And yeah, it's just always a good day, right? It's the end of the week, it's the start of the weekend, like however you perceive that. So welcome to Friday's Live with Find My Past. Already have a couple people chiming in the comments. It's great to see you all. Shirley, Gina, John up in Canada, Andrea, Joe. Fantastic. All right. Weather check. Well, actually, first, let me tell you who I am. That's helpful. My name is Jen Baldwin. I'm the research specialist at Find My Past. For those of you who don't know me, or perhaps it is your first time with us, welcome. We're very delighted to have you here. And we have an hour of lovely discussion in front of us, which is great. It's like literally the thing I look forward to all week long. Weather report. I'm in Colorado, so typically very sunny here, but it is raining. It rained all day yesterday, and it's supposed to rain all day today, and it is supposed to rain all day tomorrow, and I am excited. First of all, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest where it's very, very rainy, right? The town I grew up in is actually considered the rainiest town, at least in North America. Definitely in the top list of the rainiest places in the world. So I grew up with this and I kind of miss it. I'm now in like this high alpine desert environment. It's very dry, lots of chapstick and lotion. But the other part of the reason why I'm excited about the rain is because the Western United States has been in a drought for many years. And I think rain is a good thing. In fact, yesterday, they broke a record in Denver for the amount of precipitation in one day. I think something over 2 inches, maybe close to 3 inches in a day, which is quite a lot for this area. So, very exciting. Yay. Yay, rain. So, I hope that for all of you out there, you are enjoying your day and hopefully your weather is like you want it. I'm not going to say that it's good or bad, but lots of people telling us. Let's see, Jean is in Preston in Lancashire, and it's very sunny there. So a lovely sunny day there. That's good to hear. Illinois is overcast in Roscoe with Ellen. Rose is in the comments. Everybody say hi to Rose, and she's reporting it's very gray in London today. Cold and wet in West Yorkshire with Kim. Warm and sunny in Massachusetts with Roz. Yeah, lovely. Okay, lots of people telling. Yeah, very good. All right, all of the usuals are here. It looks like everybody's kind of getting here, so I can start soon, right? Karen's in a chilly, damp Enfield in North London. Julie is in a sunny Bristol. That's good. Oh dear, Daphne's saying houses have been flooded out with the rain in Somerset, so that's not good. That's maybe a little too much rain. That's unfortunate. I hope everybody's okay, and I hope you're okay. Um, What else? Devon is warm and sunny. Wexford is beautiful and sunny. So it sounds like London and area is getting kind of hit, but the rest of the country may be doing all right. Haven't seen anybody chime in from Scotland or Ireland yet, but I'll be watching for it. Okay. Um, Great. We have a lot to cover today. Some new records, of course, and our question of the week, and all sorts of other little bits and tidbits. I have this long list of links I've handed to Rose, so I have a lot to talk about. And so let's just get going. So the question of the week this week. And I will let you start commenting on this, and then we'll talk about it in a bit. How are you sharing your genealogy discoveries? How do you do this? Is it a blog post? Is it social media? Is it an email to family members? Do you share at all? And not necessarily sharing with other genealogists, although we could talk about that as well. But what do you do with your discoveries once you've made them, right? I get really excited about things that I discover, and then I'm like, who am I going to tell about this? And sometimes that list is really short. So, how are you sharing your genealogy discoveries? That's this week's question. And right, so, okay, let me before we start in on new records, actually. I want to call out this comment. Daphne saying, great session last Wednesday. First, thanks, Daphne. That's very kind of you. But secondly, and way more importantly, the session that we did this past Wednesday with Blaine Bettinger on using Chat GPT for genealogy. And he actually gave us 10 very practical ways to use AI, artificial intelligence, or Chat GPT in particular, um, for prompts about helping us with our family history. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I've been using Chat GPT pretty regularly, pretty consistently for the last couple of months. And I actually really enjoy it. I think it's something interesting to explore. So even if you're a little bit hesitant about using AI, like I get that, but it's worth it just to do like the I don't know, just to see if it works for you. I guess that's something to think about and consider. So if you wanted to catch up on those, we've actually done 2 sessions now with Blaine. The first was kind of an introduction to ChatGPT, and then this week was very practical, like 10 things you can specifically do. Um, and you can see those recordings on our Facebook page, on the Find My Past Facebook page, or the Find My Past YouTube channel. Either one, they're recorded and they'll be available indefinitely. And of course, Blaine is just wonderful, right? So, and I mean, he's so easy to listen to. Um, um, a great introduction to that system and process. If you haven't yet used it or explored or played, maybe sometime this weekend would be a good chance to do so. Okay, so new records this week. We published. Yep, there we go. There's my little banner. Great, new records. We published thousands of records from Hampshire. So an update to our Hampshire vital records. So baptisms, marriages, and burials, our parish records on Hampshire. Got a big update this year. This year, sorry, this week. I'm all over the place today. The baptisms got 235,000 new entries, and they now cover from 1498 to 1987. That's a huge span. Marriages got 208,000 new records. Burials got 239,000 new records. Both of those start in the 1500s and go all the way up to the 1980s. So if you are interested in Hampshire, you have genealogy to do there, take another look. Today is the time to go back and check and see if we've added something that you haven't seen before. Included in the set, we found Charles Dickens. His baptism is included. We found the baptism of Jane Austen, which it was interesting to see, and these are actually profiled on our blog. So if you haven't seen the blog yet, check it out because you'll see a little bit of the background and the story around both of those famous names. And thanks, Rose, for putting that link in the chat. I was curious about the differences in when they were baptized, right? Charles Dickens was baptized, I think it said about a month after he was born. And then Jane Austen was baptized the day after she was born. And I don't know very much about the conditions when those two famous names were actually born, but I wonder if Jane was maybe a little bit sickly or they were concerned about her for some reason. And so they baptized her very quickly versus Charles Dickens, who, of course, did not get baptized right away. Okay, so those are all updates to our existing collections, but do take a look if you have Hampshire family history. And Rose has put in a question of her own. I didn't even think about this, but she's right. Has anybody been to Jane Austen's house in Hampshire? That would be fun. You could share that experience and combine it with looking at her baptismal entry, which is very cool. Good shout, Rose. Good shout. All right. Lots of questions of the week coming in. Thank you very much. Keep them all coming. Yep. And I'm just scrolling through the comments. Oh, hi, Liam. Nice of you to join us. Okay, so newspapers this week. We did not add any new newspapers this week, but we have, and I don't know if you guys are really up on the numbers here, but we have 67 million pages in the newspaper collection. So that's still a lot of research to do. That's still a lot of reading, right? I don't know, how long would it take you to read 67 million pages of newsprint back to back, like page by page? It may take a long time. Um, and on top of that, like a part of that, and what makes the newspaper collection so accessible in my mind is that there are 2.4 million newspaper images that are actually just free. You don't need a subscription to access those pages. So 2.4 million free pages of newspaper is pretty significant. Hopefully, that will keep you all busy for a while. Um, I'm going to take that off. Great. So no new newspapers this week. We will get back to regular publication. Absolutely. It's incredible, actually, the newspaper team and how fast they work and what they do. So huge kudos actually to our very own Rose, who helps manage that team, and is heavily involved in our newspaper publication. She is the go-to person for reels, and she just does an incredible job. So huge shout out to Rose and the newspaper team. They're all amazing. But really 2.4 million free newspapers. Like that's huge. On top of that, in addition to that 67 million pages. So if you have a subscription to Find My Past, you have access to the vast majority of those. If you have the British newspaper archive as well, you have access to everything. There are some limitations there, but not very many. Okay, so okay, I'm just going to go back. There were a couple people that have been commenting on my questions about Jane Austen. So Karen tells us that she was a month overdue date and they thought she had a weakened immune system. I didn't know that. That's very interesting, Karen. Thank you. Excellent. A couple of you have been to her house. Jan went a number of years ago. Shirley went and said it was absolutely lovely. Someday I'll get to all of these things. Maybe. And a good tip from Jean, when it comes to baptism records, right? And these are little things about family history that make communities like this so important, right? Is being able to share these little tips with each other. If you can see the actual baptism record, which in many cases you can online, sometimes in the margin it says a private baptism or PB, which usually indicates because the child is poorly. Thank you, Jean, for commenting on that and bringing that to the rest of the group. Hopefully, some of you knew that, and maybe some of you didn't, and we're learning and sharing some new concepts and new little tidbits to help us in our research. So if you didn't know that one already, make yourself a post-it note or something because it really is a very useful little tip. Okay, Jenny says, great question. Actually, I have a question to ask about a specific newspaper. Where should I direct my question? So, absolutely, in the comments, Rose is with us today. She can definitely try to help you. But outside of this platform, the best way is, and I was just going to look and see if I have it that I can put up on the screen. I'm going to do it really quick. The best thing to do is email our support team. And they will then um, forward that query to the appropriate person, which in this case is probably Rose, um, or the digitization team. That email address is support@findmypast.com. Our support team is incredible. They are absolutely amazing people. And you should see the internal dialogue that happens back and forth as they do everything they can to answer questions on behalf of the customer. Every single day, I see comments about, I can't find this record, or this link doesn't seem to be working. Can we fix it? Or, help me verify that this person's request about the enumeration district in the 1921 census is correct or incorrect. Like there's so much dialogue and happening in the background. And it's one of the reasons that I love our support team so much is because they really genuinely are anxious for the answer on your behalf. So do email them and be in touch with them whenever you come up with anything on Find My Past or the British Newspaper Archive. We love to hear from our customers. But if you have a specific query about a newspaper title or a record collection or a question or how to use the site, support@findmypast.com is the best way to get in touch with us because then that can be filtered out to whoever is most appropriate. So that's a great question. Thank you very much for asking it. And we're always excited to share and answer those questions. And we definitely want to make sure that we're answering your questions and trying to appeal to what you want, right? Especially with things like newspapers, right? There's this huge mass collection at the British Library, and we can look and pretty much easily see whether or not a title is available or if there's something more to be scanned. So it's always good to hear that feedback. Okay. Um, oh, Karen sharing one more thing about Jane Austen's house. A video on YouTube, inside Jane Austen's house with Lucy Worsley. That should be good. Um, so thanks for sharing that. That's fantastic. And another good comment. This is really good. Jan saying, fascinating to learn at Jane Austen's house, the tea was kept locked away in a cupboard. It was a very expensive luxury at the time. Yeah, I think I've heard that as well. Maybe read it in a book, but that's a good reminder of a little bit of social history there. Okay, cool. I'm gonna take this banner off the screen. There we go. Okay, excellent. What's next? We talked about new records. We talked about newspapers. So let's talk about our question of the week. Let's go back up through the chat and see what you guys have said. The question of the week is, how are you sharing your genealogy discoveries? I'm just going to be honest. I'm not very good at this. My siblings aren't terribly interested. My dad is interested, but obviously on predominantly on his family, although we're starting to do a little bit more on my mom's family. Um, but that's in like a little bit of like a she's been gone for 3 years, so it's a little bit of like stuff I really should have done, right? That you always say tell yourself. So I find it actually quite challenging to share new discoveries, in particular with my family. Obviously, I share a lot with the genealogy community kind of at large, and I do a lot of that actually here on this platform, and it that brings me a lot of joy. But I'm curious what everybody else does. So let's dive into your comments. Kim saying she shares through blogging, emails, writing stories, messaging family, Facebook groups. That's a lot. Telling anyone who will listen, even those who don't want to know. Yeah, I think there's a like a little bit of a balance there that you have to achieve, right? Like, I mean, I can picture myself sitting around the holiday table, like going on and on and on, and my family just being like, "Get me out of here." So I don't know. Definitely something I haven't quite gotten just right yet with my family. Karen says that she uses a blog, but she's slacking a little bit lately. I think that's okay. I think it's totally okay to take a break in writing, actually. And a lot of writers would actually say that probably helps them. Curious for those of you in the room who are solid writers. I know Rose is, for example. Um, how does taking a break benefit your writing and your ability to write and your passion for writing, right? Your motivation for writing? Be curious about what you guys think about that. Um, let's see. Shirley saying, my daughter and I message each other. Lots of queries at the moment. So that's cool. That's very exciting. I also have a daughter, but she is a teenager. Sometimes she cares and sometimes she doesn't. It just depends on the subject matter. Um, Gina saying she is sharing with a new match, a new contact, a second cousin in Australia who has just joined a website. And so we've been sharing details, photos, and some certificates. That's fantastic. That's a great way to share, right? Is actually just making those connections, especially with DNA matching and all of that out there for us now. And trees, right? Using the online trees to make matches with people and go back and forth and discuss research. Um, I think that's always a good idea. Okay. Ellen, I share with relatives, fellow members of the DAR, and anyone who's the least bit of interest or not. For those of you unfamiliar, DAR is the Daughters of the American Revolution. I'm also a member, Ellen, so hey, nice to see you. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring up a kind of a different aspect, right, that we haven't touched on yet, and that's sharing with specific parts of the genealogy community, right? Like your local family history society, for example, or organizations like the DAR and other lineage groups. So that's always a good way to share as well. Karen adds, that she's given a couple of talks to groups about family history stories and the process of discoveries. I think that's probably actually the way that I share the most when I think about it. Almost all of my lectures have some kind of personal example. Um, and I definitely like to tell stories about the process of discovery, right? And my hope when I do that, and Karen, you are probably finding the same, is that people can learn from my mistakes, right? And I make plenty of mistakes in my research and my process. I want people to be able to avoid those mistakes if they can benefit from mine, right? Janet saying, I tell my brother if anything interesting comes up. Not often, she says, but I've been writing articles for Family History Society journals, more so from lockdown forward. Right. So that's another great opportunity, right, for all of us. Family History Societies is everyone that I've ever worked with is always just totally hungry for information and articles and things to put in their newsletter. So that's a great avenue to do it. Jean saying I put my new information, or I add to my tree and let family members know anything when I find something of interest. Sorry, I don't know why this is hard to read. It shouldn't be. Since using the internet to research is so much easier to find living relatives I didn't know I had. Yeah, absolutely. So back to that concept of finding connections in places we didn't know they were, right? With DNA and online trees and all of that. That's very good. So using the tree primarily and then just kind of saying, hey, I found this. Joe, this is a good one. I like this. I'm planning on making an heirloom quilt because she quilts and crochets. Also looking for inspiration from others today, thinking about digital options and considering writing a book. I love the idea of an heirloom quilt. I am not a very crafty person. I don't do a lot of that kind of thing. Um, really. So I'm like um uh, so I'm always just kind of in awe of people who can do that. So an heirloom quilt to me just sounds like an amazing thing to have, and an amazing project to work on. Um, Digital options and considering writing a book. I think these are all things that we should be talking about actively. How do we help each other do that? What's the best way to go about this? So if you have suggestions for Joe, please put them in the comments. Um, Diane made a family business group on Facebook. Not sure who reads it, but I think it's interesting. And also a weather report, very dull in Scotland. So thanks for that. Yeah, I have one of these too. I have a family Facebook group. I typically post things like my daughter's, sport events and stuff. I occasionally post genealogy stuff, I guess, now that I think about it. Um, but not very many people respond to those. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many people actually engage and read with those groups. That might be interesting. It might be an interesting little activity to kind of act on and see if they are successful or not. Right. Okay. Here's another one from Pickles. That's great. Pickles, I don't recognize your name. So if you are new, welcome. You're new to my memory, so glad to have you with us. She says, I used to share all my latest discoveries with my mom, who was just as excited as me. But once she got dementia, she found she looking at the tree increasingly confusing, and I stopped sharing much with her as it is distressing. Yeah, I can empathize with that for sure. My mom got to be the same way. Before she passed. So yeah, those conversations kind of came to almost an abrupt halt in my case. Um, but I do want to say, we'll be thinking of you and your mom and hoping that you are able to find ways to connect with her. Dementia is very difficult. Um, yeah. So now it is. You've hit on a note for me. I think it is a little bit of like finding someone else to make that connection with a little bit, which is hard. That's a really hard thing to do. Okay, let's see. What other questions? There's lots of comments in the middle here about Jane Austen and baptisms and all sorts of stuff. BNA, woo. Um, okay, Beth says she tells her family members and puts finds on her personal socials. Okay, cool. That's great. That's very good. I guess I do that a little bit, maybe not so much. Okay, I'm still going through question of the week. This one's a good one from Roz. I live in Massachusetts, but have a group of friends in the UK. About half of us do genealogy and we share our finds. And that, I love that because that is the beauty of the world that we live in today, right? Being able to connect with each other no matter where we are in the world. I think that's incredible. Me being able to do these broadcasts from Colorado for a company that's based in London, I think that's amazing. And I love that Roz, you bring up the idea of just genealogy friends. I have lots of genealogy friends as well, and there are a couple that I call like they're probably one of the first people I would say that I'm like, I found something really cool, and I know their family history almost as much as I know my own, and they know mine, right? Like, and it just like, it just like is a never-ending, nonstop kind of like ongoing process. So yeah, that's right. Friends, our friend groups are incredible. Um, and Rose kind of sums it up for us a little bit. I think I mainly share my discoveries with the community here, right? So I think we're both on the same page a bit. I think the Fridays Live audience know more about my family than some of my family members. Absolutely true. I definitely think that's true. Okay, I wanted to. There's a whole lot of other comments, but um, we'll come back to some of these. I wanted to talk about the idea of kind of, let me hide this, of the records that we released this week, right? They are all from one county. They are, birth, marriage, and burial, or baptism, marriage, and burial records, essential backbone records, right, to our family history. But there is another opportunity there, and it kind of just showcases like, we're talking about all of these records from Hampshire. Um, there's a lot of opportunity out there to learn about a particular place and time. You guys have heard me talk about um, fan research, friends, associates, and neighbors. You know that I love my social history. So I wanted to kind of share some of those resources that maybe allow us to keep kind of that social history and context kind of at the forefront of our mind, right? Like we've already talked about the comments about using parish records in a different way to see or to infer when a child was considered sickly, or going to the house, the historic building of Jane Austen, and experiencing the world from her eyes, right? The tea being locked in the cabinet. Those are all pieces of social history that we can then apply to our own family history research, right? Just because it's Jane Austen's house doesn't necessarily mean that that our ancestors lived in a distinctly different way. Now, of course, they would have in many ways, but things like having tea in the house, that was kind of a universal deal, right? It was a luxury and it was expensive, and so if you had it, you kept it secured, right, as a valuable, basically. So let's talk for a minute, just a couple of minutes maybe. I wanted to share some resources on how you might delve into some of that research in a more specific way. So for me, these questions all come down to social history. And I started learning about social history and these concepts when I was in high school, right? So I don't remember the equivalent to the UK off the top of my head, but basically when I was like 15, 16 years old. Um, and um, we would learn about these things in our history courses, and they would frame them in the sense of an acronym. And the one that I particularly gravitate to that is helpful for me to remember, and I still use it to this day, is called SPICE. Put a spice up on the screen. There are a couple, and if you just use your favorite search engine and look for SPICE acronym history, you'll find it right away. But SPICE stands for social, political, interaction with the environment, cultural, and economic. So when you are looking at history, you can look at all of those different elements, and actually think about how they apply to your ancestor, and try to research those avenues, right? So I'm going to actually share my screen. Hang on just a second. I found this a few months ago, actually. This is There we go. And I'll see if I can make it a little bit bigger for you guys. This is a PDF that was made available by an AP history program. So advanced placement. This is a US resource for students, right? And it works through kind of what the acronym stands for. So social, political, interaction, culture, and economic, right? So it's all thinking about, um, you know, how did war impact this particular place and time? How did people communicate? How did weather events impact um, the people in this community? How did they have access to art or theater or music? What was the money like? What currency did they use? And what form did it come in? So all of these questions are kind of asked, and it gives us the opportunity to have a framework on that social history, just really saying, these are specific areas that you can look at where there are historical resources available to us that allow us to answer some of these questions. Now, one of the reasons I like this particular PDF is that if you scroll down to page 2, there's a little chart. So you can actually, if you are a visual person like I am, I have this on my desktop as a a document that I can manipulate. I built a template for myself. I can also, of course, print this out and just brainstorm ideas about what and when and where I'm researching, and trying to kind of fill in some of the margins here and understand like the world in which my ancestor lived and was found, right? And it kind of gives you the acronym, and then it gives you all the little bullet points about what to think about. It's a framework to put yourself in. It's an idea, it's a concept to be able to say, how do I explore a particular location? Right? So I like the SPICE acronym. There are several other acronyms and frameworks that we can use. I fully recommend that you look at resources like this and kind of give yourself something to go, oh, right, I haven't really touched on the political history of my ancestor, what that might have looked like, and what resources are available to me. And so use this as a way to kind of remind yourself of what's happening. And what other discoveries you might be able to make. Um, okay, and thank you, Rose. She did share the link to this PDF in the chat. So if you happen to um, want to use it, it, of course, totally up to you. That is available for you. Um, and Liam saying we need to dig out the spreadsheet. Yeah, so we did this. Liam and myself and one other employee at Findmypast sat down at a pub one night last year, Liam, and we literally made a spreadsheet on the back of a menu comparing the different school systems, so US, England, and Scotland, and trying to identify at what stage everything happens. So I have that spreadsheet somewhere. Um, yeah, so thanks, Liam, for that. We need to get that back out. Okay, a couple other resources that help you really think about your ancestors in context in life, right? So I almost always do a quick Google just to see what I could find. So I did that for Hampshire just because that's the county that we're focused on this particular week. And one of the websites that I found was the Hampshire History site. Wonderful site. I've never seen this before, I don't think, until yesterday. Really, really good and an excellent context. So they have a description of time periods. They map all the places and significant places. I'm gonna. Oh dear, that's that was not a good link to click on. I do have a note actually. Don't click on the places one, but the map link actually is really cool. So they actually are identifying all the historical maps of Hampshire, um, online and off, and actually, and this, yeah, I don't own the website. So they have some glitches to work out. Okay, it's fine. But when this loads, look at that. Look at all, they found all these maps and it links directly into the map itself. I think this is awesome. This is great stuff. They also have a names list, although they very much clarify that they are not a family history site. They have a whole line of resources, including a gallery. And I love this idea for our local historical organizations, societies. I think this is just a volunteer run thing. Um, because right, I'm 4,000 miles away, so do I get to go to Hampshire and walk around and see all these historical sites? No. I can't just get in my car and do that tomorrow, right? But they've given me a whole lot of of images that I can peruse through to kind of see these historical locations around the county. And I think that's fantastic, right? You also see this kind of thing on like Flickr and that kind of stuff, but I love that it's all built into this one website. So way to go, Hampshire History is a fantastic resource. Another one that we should all, of course, be turning to is our local genealogical and family history societies. Um, if you haven't utilized this for the area that you're researching, please do. Please do it this week or today, even would be great this weekend. These websites are invaluable. We really, none of us could do what we do without them, right? Genealogy societies and family history organizations have been working in this world for generations. And many of the records that we all use on every website is provided by these organizations. So huge shout out to the volunteers, but please do take advantage of their online resources. And they have all sorts of things, right? They have a journal, they have articles, they have a news and events section, they have an area for learning about research in their county, tips and hints and how to do it best in Hampshire, right? Every county is a little bit different. Another go-to resource for me, of course, and probably for many of you, is British History Online. And I love their resources. I like their county histories, but they also have a wonderful maps collection. You guys knew I was going to talk about maps again, right? I love maps. So in addition to other big map collections like the National Library of Scotland maps, right? Look at things like British History Online for their maps and their resources and their publications. They have an extensive catalog. You can access quite a bit of it for free without a subscription of any kind. Although if you are near a university, I believe you can actually get access. So please do take advantage of sites like this as well. Their social history is incredible. And then don't forget things like eBay. I love a good eBay search. I was actually able to find, just really quickly as an example, a postcard from Hampshire from 1912. Let me close that. Um, in US prices, of course, right? But what an incredible, I mean, this is great, right? The HMS Victory postcard. It's got a halfpenny stamp on it. It's got writing on the back, right? So if you're a postcard collector, or if you're looking for a particular image of something happening or a location, postcards are a great way to go. And in this case, it actually has, you know, it's used, right? It's written on, and I am definitely the kind of person who definitely wants to look up these people, right? Like figure out like what is their story. I want to know. I have not yet done that, but cool find, right? eBay's full of wonderful stuff like this. So take advantage of those resources and more, right? There's plenty more. Um, oh gosh, there's so many options, right? So if you're looking at a more modern period, you want to look at things like the official reports from the 1921 census. There is an official report for every county and location across the census. So you want to read through those and get that statistical information. Obviously, newspapers, right? Newspapers are a huge source. You want to look at the Family Search Wiki as a resource for ideas and suggestions on how to frame your social history and your research. You want to look at items like JSTOR and the local city council and archives office. I could go on and on and on forever. I will not. But I hope that some of this is kind of an opportunity for you to just be like, yes, I can learn so much about one particular county, one particular place and time, and then I can combine that with marriage, or burial, marriage, and baptism records. I said it backwards. And put those two things together and make that story so much more comprehensive and in depth. I love social history. I could talk about it forever. Okay, let's look at some of your comments. Liam, great suggestion. If you have a tree on Find My Past, there is a story feature that allows you to actually see bits of historical context from the timeline in which your ancestors were alive. So look for that as well. It's a fantastic tool, fantastic feature. It also links to newspapers, but it gives you kind of these vignettes that people have been writing, and it talks about all sorts of different things, major accidents, and when televisions were introduced to the household, and all sorts of different stuff. So that's a lovely feature on the Find My Past tree. So thanks for that reminder, Liam. Rose has been sharing all the links. Thanks so much. Karen says, love maps, compulsory for all family historians. Totally agree. I never met a map I didn't like. And I've never seen a map that wasn't helpful in family history in some capacity. So couldn't agree more, Karen. And she's saying, again, often found local history books on sale in libraries and charity shops. Yep, absolutely. I go to at least one charity shop every time I go to England because I like books. But also tons of online resources for used book sales, right? You don't necessarily have to buy everything new and spend a ton of money. I bought some books last week and I think I spent $3 or $4 each. And the shipping is free, even from the UK for me. So yeah, it's some really great online resources as well. Um, oh, Liam, again, he and Rose were on eBay in a research session last week looking at millennium bug corkscrews. Now that sounds fun. I want to know more about that. Um, for sure. Karen's sharing a couple of, oh, but we didn't buy one. Oh, that's too bad, actually. Um, um, okay, let's see what else. Karen's making some suggestions, and please do this. Add more links to the chat. Obviously, we could never include them all. There are so many sites out there, but hispop.org is great for statistics. Absolutely agree. And I did mention the National Library of Scotland. Daphne read my mind and shared one of the links there. Absolutely agree. Very, very helpful. Their map collection is incredible. Um, and Joe said, "I can't walk past a charity shop." I can't either. Yeah, yeah. All I have to think about when I go over to the UK is like, how heavy is my suitcase gonna be? Can I get it home? That's the only question. Random ephemera, yeah, 100%, 100%. Um, oh, and I love this. I love it when this happens. Karen bought an old book a few weeks ago, and it was full of the previous owners. About 10 people had signed the book. That's amazing. I love that. I would totally do a book history, right? We talk about house history and like family history. I would totally do a book history on that. Like, who are all those people? How did that book travel its way around? Can never have too many books, maps, or documents. Mhm, mhm. Never too many. That's right. Good. That's well said, Beth. Okay. So I think that's most of the comments about my little segue into social history. I'm gonna take the little SPICE acronym down. I think I clicked the wrong button. Do do do. We're gonna go back to question of the week. But again, if you're interested in social history, right, this is something that I think fascinates me, and I can never really learn enough about it. Um, use that SPICE acronym and apply that, and just experiment and see if it works. I'd love to hear um, if it works for you, if that's something that like helps put you in that right mindset or frames your research in any way. So feel free to comment. Okay. We started today talking about stories and how you share your genealogy discoveries. That was our question of the week. Want to make sure that we remind everybody that Find My Past is always eager to listen to your stories and to help you share your stories as well. So we're going to pop a link into the chat. It's a little form that we created that allows you to share your stories with us. Now, that might be used in a number of ways, depending on whether or not you're comfortable with it. Could be used here, right, as an example or a case study. Could be used in our efforts with the press, our marketing efforts, our blog posts, our social media. So there's all sorts of avenues that we can share your story on and your research, and we would love to do that. We actually think that you guys are the heroes of family history. You're the ones doing, putting in the hours and hours of work, and we would love to showcase your discoveries and your adventures in family history. So if you have a story to share and you're interested in doing that, please do take note of that link. Rose just shared it in the chat. Thank you, Rose. And it is forums.monday.com. Monday.com is a platform we use to kind of organize all of our content. So it just makes a very simple form for us. It's kind of like a Google Docs form, but a little bit more secure. And we would love to hear from you. So if you get the chance or if you're interested at all, please do share your story with us. We'd love to hear it. Okay. I know there was some question of the weeks on stories. So I'm going to try and go back. And see if I can find where I left off. Um, okay, yep, right. So we're going to pick back up with Moira. She prints a copy of her family history from Charting Companion, right, which is a software through Family Tree Maker, adds photos, pictures, and copies of old maps, designs a front cover, which I call The Way We Wear. I like that. I like the title. Bind it and pass them to various family members who all seem to be genuinely interested. That's great. That's fantastic. That's a lot of work. So very impressive. Well done. I definitely think that that is a time well spent, because we can do all the things that we want online or in our software, but if it never leaves our desk, um, is it really being preserved? Like, a hard copy of something is much harder for people to just kind of discard. I feel like, right? Digital stuff will maybe live on longer, depending on if you keep up with the technology. But it can very easily just sit in a computer or on a hard drive or a thumb drive or something and never be looked at again. Whereas a hard copy of something is actually like in their face. Um, so I like that. I definitely think that there's value in that for sure. Um, duh, duh, duh. Karen saying family history societies love articles written by members. The London, Westminster, and Middlesex Family History Society in particular gets a little thumbs up there. Absolutely true. I've yet to see a society that doesn't want an article. Uh, and then adding from Karen, I recently scanned and enhanced our family photo album and added names that I had identified and then created a PDF book that could be shared. That's a great way to do it too, actually. I have a handful of those kinds of things. I've done similar. One of them from my husband's family actually came with the little labels and everybody was identified. And I was like, oh, that's great, actually. I love that. John, going back to the quilt discussion, I saw an amazing quilt where the person did a digital clip of their ancestors' signatures and then created a quilt from that. That's so cool. I totally dig that. That is really amazing. I don't know if I could figure out how to do that, but I would like to. Right. That's really cool. Okay. Karen, I record my research on paper and printed docs in a file. Then I can take it to my parents for them to look through it. They don't have a computer or internet. Mhm. So they can't access the tree online. I tell them what I found over the phone as well. I tend to pass down my files to my son and hope future generations will get to see it. I think that's important too, right? We need to be future proofing our research and making sure that it doesn't get just dumped in the bin. It's maybe a topic for another day. Moira saying again, I belong to family history societies and I share to online family history groups, including Find My Past. Thank you. That's great. And of course, the Find My Past Facebook platform is a great way to do that. The Find My Past forum is kind of our official group, and obviously a wonderful place to share your discoveries. Claire, I share with some living relatives who I think will be interested. But some discoveries are hard to work out if they want to know. Yeah, that's true, right? Like especially those discoveries that take us years and years and years to kind of put together and like puzzle everything together. That's really hard to describe to someone who hasn't lived that experience. And like, how do I summarize 15 years of research in a 5-minute conversation? That's pretty tricky. Share some photos on a personal Facebook page. Would like to get a family tree made and printed like on a scroll, but need to make sure it's accurate. Yeah, definitely. Wants to do a scrapbook for each person, so it's a more visual way to show nephews and other family members. Yeah, I totally agree. But you bring up a good point, Claire. It's hard sometimes to know exactly how to tell that story. Like even I struggle with that a bit. Even just talking to my husband and my daughter, at the dinner table every night. I do research all the time, and so how do I tell them about my day without going into this long spiel about why it's important that this family was baptized in a nonconformist church and this family wasn't, and why that matters in the course of British history, from 1830, right? And then how that's relevant to what I actually discovered about the like, like that's not an easy thing to summarize sometimes. Okay. Oh, and so a great comment from Rosie about Hampshire. One of the things I discovered about family in Hampshire is how close some places in Hampshire are to Wiltshire. So I don't dismiss possible finds in each county close to the border. Yep. Maps. See, this is why maps are important. One of the many reasons. Almost just ripped my headset off. Okay, cool. All right. Oh, this one's good. Let's see. C tells us some ideas, right? So, number one, create family themed birthday, Mother's Day, Christmas cards. Two, submit histories to reunion books, heritage books, family Facebook sites, and the few pro genealogy cousins. That's great. Those are all really, really good solutions. Um, yeah, something just happened to my monitor. 2 secs. Hang on. I'm gonna be right there. Oh, my mouse is moving around funny. So every once in a while, my mouse moves around really funny, and I can't figure out how to fix it. Okay. Um, yeah. Okay, cool. Let's see. What other comments? I'm gonna take this one down. And then we got started talking about books. So the thread goes into books and buying books, and everybody loves books. Okay. Lots of books. Uh, oh, I like this. Andrew has researched the history of his car and all of its owners, like researching the history of a book. That's really cool. Yeah, that's perfect. My camera's trying to reset, and so it looks really fuzzy on my end. There we go. That's a little bit better. All right. Okay, what else? People saying, going to need to see that quilt. I totally agree, Liam. Absolutely. Um, and then C's adding, family stories added everywhere. During a tea, gave history of tea with context of female ancestors' life. I like that. Just incorporating it into everyday conversation. D, that's or C. I'm sorry. That's good. I think that's really good. Mhm. Okay. Lots of comments and backs and forths, it looks like. It looks like you guys have kept Rose busy today with newspapers and conversation and all sorts of things. So that's good. Um, all right. Last couple people, I think, coming through. Um, Right. One more from Karen. For her aunt's memorial lunch with cousins, made paper placemats with her family tree on them. Was very pleased the children insisted on taking them home. Oh, that's really cool. I love that. What a very creative idea. Um, Lots of you are sharing lots of creative ideas. So I'm really, I love it. I love it. I love it. Uh, it's good. Like I said, I'm not that creative, so I have a hard time thinking of things like that. Okay, let's see. Did we cover everything? We talked about our new records this week, Hampshire. We talked about newspapers, 67 million pages, guys. That's a lot of research to do. Make sure that you're taking advantage of that. We talked about sharing our genealogy discoveries in a huge, vast number of ways. I still want to see the quilt with the signatures on it. I think that is incredible. We talked about social history a little bit and kind of focusing in on a particular county in a number of different ways. Look through the chat and the thread for all those links that have been shared. Make sure that you're taking advantage of all of these resources just everywhere, right? They're all over the internet. Don't limit your research and your time to just family history websites like Find My Past. Make sure that you're really utilizing everything. Check out a framework like Spice and see if that works for you, and see if that's helpful or not. Um, okay, lots of good conversation today. Thank you all very much. Make sure that if you have a story that you would like to share with us, we would really, really appreciate hearing from you. Please do that and use the link that's in the chat. Um, and that's been shared. And I think that covers it for the week. It looks like people are slowing down. So, always a good time. Thank you very much for spending your hour with me. I really appreciate that. I hope everybody has a lovely rest of your Friday and has a fantastic weekend. For those of you in the United States and Canada, and Australia, I think too this weekend, happy Mother's Day if that applies. Um, Sunday is Mother's Day for many of us around the world, although I know the UK already had their Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day from Find My Past to all of you. And we hope that you have a really lovely weekend, and we will see you next week with more new records.